This is a completely neutral look on the game The Last of Us 2, if we never played the first game. The way the game has unfolded has left most of the gaming audiences with a bitter taste in their mouth, and I would like to try to understand why, since I am probably one of the few who thoroughly enjoyed the plot, the thrills, the anxiety-driven moments, and the sheer remorse or guilt as to having to kill so many who are probably, just like our character, just trying to survive. This is Buttonsmash with Point of View. The Last of Us was a phenomenal game. The game forayed into a tried and tested similar territory with a zombie apocalypse, and with so many games with a similar theme out there, you wondered why Naughty Dog decided to delve into this when they could have easily done some action-adventure oriented game like the Uncharted series, which they were so known for then. But this was a different kind of game. This was not your regular shoot 'em up with an arsenal of weapons, unlimited ammo, and a never-depleting health bar. This game prioritized sneaking and stealth. One false step and it would result in an immediate game over with a gory death scene. This gameplay though was nothing new and had been done a lot previously in most stealth-based games, but the gameplay was not what made The Last of Us a phenomenon. It was the characters. Enter Joel, a middle-aged father who is just that, one of us. The game starts during the beginning of the cordyceps infestation and an intense escape routine with his daughter, which results in the daughter dying. You immediately feel that connect with him as the somber music fills the screen and the camera zooms on the daughter's lifeless face and a sobbing Joel. You already feel for him, and it's just been 5 minutes into the game.
Please, please, please.
Cut to a few years later, where life has been summarized into living in established bases, and your job involves going to sources of food, water, and eliminating as many infected along the way. This is where Joel meets a friend of his, Marlene, and is introduced to Ellie. He is instructed to take Ellie to the Firefly base where they can find a cure for the cordyceps infection through Ellie, since she is immune to the infection. Simple enough, right? You get the gist of the game as you understand that your primary objective is a glorified escort mission, where the game would end with Ellie reaching the Firefly camp, the cure being found, and the world going back to being happy, and probably a final shot of Ellie and Joel overlooking a sunset. But Naughty Dog had something else planned. It made you invested in Joel, to a point where you yourself as a player became Joel. His thoughts became yours, his decisions yours. As the game progresses, you slowly start realizing that the world is grim, with little tragic stories happening simultaneously all over. And you start feeling that maybe the ending is not going to pan out the way you're expecting it. And your thoughts are validated the moment you realize that Ellie could die while trying to find the cure. You, as the player, want to save her. You think, screw the cure. I just want to keep Ellie alive and have a future as Joel's daughter. And the ending unfolds where Joel goes through all the Fireflies, killing them in the process and getting Ellie out of there. An unconscious Ellie then wakes up asking Joel about how she ended up with him again, and Joel lies to her saying that the Fireflies could not find a cure from her. Ellie is a little skeptical and presses Joel further, to which he flat out lies again, and the game ends.
I know that's not what you want to hear right now.
Swear to me. Swear to me that everything that you said about the Fireflies is true.
I swear.
Okay.
After being so invested in the characters, you're left with so many mixed emotions by the end of it all. You're, however, left with the hope for a future where you know Ellie and Joel would be together. Cut to The Last of Us 2, and you already know Joel and Ellie. You can sense an awkward chemistry between Ellie and Joel, and maybe it was something to do with what happened with the Fireflies. You're already rooting for Joel and are okay to look past what he's done. Joel and Ellie seem to be living a pretty decent life anyway. But what if The Last of Us 2 was a standalone game? Say this game did not introduce you to Joel and Ellie and you would have just had to find out what happened in the past through finding some subtext or notes while rummaging, and then you go on and build your own story. The same way From Software do their games. Would we really feel so much for Joel and Ellie the way we do now? I don't think so. You see, according to me, The Last of Us 2 is a masterpiece. A story so brutally out there that it questions everything you've seen or done in probably all your gaming lives. Basically, the plot can be summarized into one word: revenge. But it is much more than that. The main theme of the story is Ellie going out into the world to exact revenge on Joel's killers. Your typical plot of how the protagonist will stop at nothing to find the perpetrator and unleash all the build-up rage and emotion. We've had plenty of games and movies like these before, and they've all been on a similar ramp to do a lot of mini quests so that you can slowly but surely make way to the main antagonist and have a final showdown. Probably a boss fight with you emerging the winner. The same trope is followed here as well, but when you finally reach the end and come face to face with the final boss, you do not feel the rage you felt earlier. In fact, you don't want to kill the final boss. This is an emotion I've never felt in a game before. I've always looked forward to fight the next main mini-boss so that I could get to the final one and finish them off. The only similar feeling I've ever experienced in a game is during the final stages of Braid. Those who've played the game know what I'm talking about. And this is where The Last of Us 2 shines in its character development. It literally puts you in the shoes of Abby, apparently the villain in a lot of eyes, and makes her a playable character. Imagine if the first game had the adventures of Abby and her father, and you get to the ending where you, as Abby, realize that a gun-wielding maniac has killed all of your closed ones, including your dad. Who will your hero or villain be in this context if you had no idea of the bonding between Joel and Ellie? Would that change your mind from hating Abby to hating Ellie? Because now, Abby's father, a character you've invested your heart and soul in, has died. Your sole mission then would be to somehow manage to get to Joel and kill him. You see, our only idea for revenge and the hatred against Abby stems from the fact that she killed our beloved Joel in a very brutal way. Had we not known about Joel and Ellie's bond, or even played as Joel before, we wouldn't have been so broken. Maybe think of it like this. We don't really feel for Bruce Wayne's parents being brutally murdered because we don't really know too much about them, apart from them being wealthy do-gooders. But suppose if Alfred, the beloved butler, gets killed, wouldn't we want Bruce to take swift action against the perpetrators? Herein lies the narrative drive of The Last of Us 2. According to me, The Last of Us isn't a story about Ellie or Joel or Abby. It is a post-apocalyptic world where there are plenty of small and beautiful stories, each morally right or wrong in their own way. The desperation of Henry and Sam, the drive of Marlene, the sacrifice of Tess in The Last of Us, and the WLFs, Yara and Lev and the Seraphites themselves in The Last of Us 2. All of them are doing their best to survive. Survival in a post-apocalyptic scenario obviously means establishment of new rules and the breaking or bending of these rules. Imagine playing as Abby in the first game. This is how it would go. You're bonding with your dad, hiking, bad jokes, etc. You have a wonderful family with your dad being the only hope for a cure for a deadly cordyceps infection. You come to know of a possible girl who might be immune, and your dad is excited to do research on her so that he can find a probable cure. Snap to another cutscene and you see a bearded bloke pointing a gun at your dad in an operation theater. The next thing you know, bam! You cower in fear and wait for the monster to go away after he picks up the little girl unconscious on the surgery bed. When you gather the courage to go to the operation room, you find your dad dead. You seek revenge for your dad, and the only aim is to find and kill Joel. You train and work out so that you can fight anyone in your way. In one of your expeditions to find Joel, you stumble upon a herd of infected who are about to kill you, but a friendly messiah helps you, Joel, along with his brother. You know who this person is and want to kill him on the spot, but realize that if you do so now, it would certainly lead to your death, so you play along. Once all the infected are dead, you ask Joel and his brother to escort you to where you live. You reach your base safe and sound, and immediately disarm Joel and his brother with the help of your friends. The moment you have been waiting for has finally arrived. You kill him in front of his brother and a little teen girl who comes to try and rescue him. You let the beleaguered teen live and let her go because you never had anything to do with her in the first place. All this itself could be the plot of a pretty good indie game. Simultaneously, a vicious cult by the name of the Seraphites are after you and the WLF, which you are a part of. You get kidnapped and hung by the neck only to be rescued by a rebel sibling Seraphite duo, Yara and Lev. You team up with them to fight off a horde of infected and the Seraphites to place the rebellious siblings in a cabin far away from danger and be on your way to confront your love interest Mike as to why he shot one of their own. You meet him at the aquarium to listen to his side of the story, where he reiterates that he's probably had enough of all the mindless killing or occupation of territory and wants to move on to other things, like a nice little place in Santa Monica where apparently some of the remaining Fireflies have managed to regroup. You realize that maybe Mike has a point and wake up the next morning realizing that the rebellious siblings might be in danger. You decide to go back and rescue them. You reach the siblings where the surroundings paint a picture of immediate gunfire, but to your relief they are alive. You take them back to the aquarium since the elder sister Yara is injured and only Mel, your pregnant medic friend, can save her. You bring them to Mel, who in turn asks you to go to the hospital to get medical supplies for an emergency amputation procedure. You go to the hospital, which is an abomination in itself, and manage to get the supplies after a boss battle with the Rat King. You take the supplies back to Mel and she gets the amputation procedure done. After the surgery is done, you hear about Mel and Owen's plan to move to Santa Monica. Yara, wanting to go with Owen and Mel, speaks to her brother Lev, who is not convinced and wants their mother to join them if they decide to go. Lev then leaves in haste on a speedboat alone to meet and convince their mother about the plan. Yara decides to go behind Lev to the Seraphite's base. You join her too. On your way, you come to know that the WLF has decided to pull an all-out attack on the village base of the Seraphites, where Yara and Lev live. You make it to their house amidst chaos outside with the battle ensuing. Here you find Yara's dead mom with Lev cowering in the corner. You grab Lev and Yara and move out and try to escape the battle to avoid crossfire. Your thoughts at this moment are very convoluted, and you don't hesitate in shooting your own WLF members just to try and save Lev and Yara. In a brawl though, Yara is shot and killed by the head of the WLF, but you and Lev manage to survive. You take Lev back to the aquarium only to find that Mel and Owen have been killed by someone. You are filled with rage and anger dominates every cell in your body. You find a bloodied map and a possible hideout of the person who did this to your friends. You find the place only to realize that it is the same teenage girl whom you let go of while killing Joel. She manages to outsmart you, but after a battle, you overpower her and punch her face in. Her pregnant friend tries to kill you, but you somehow manage to overpower her. You want to kill both of them for what they've done to you and your friends, but you're now a changed person. All your recent losses have changed you for the better, and you as a person can resonate with this. You let them go and move on. A couple of years later, you're still on the hope of finding the last of the Fireflies and group up with them, but you get caught and put into a prison by a new gang of thugs who are probably worse than the Seraphites. You try to escape this prison with Lev, but you're caught and brandished to a pole where you go without food and water for a couple of months. You're tired and about to give up when a lanky framed teenager shows up in front of you, the same teenage girl. She helps cut you down from the post and you direct her to a boat. You pick up Lev and load him onto the boat when you hear the teen cry out your name in anger. She wants her revenge. Consider this your final boss fight where you have to kill her to survive. You as Abby would definitely want to kill the teenage girl and be done with it because you care for Lev and what you want is a future for you and Lev together. If you knew nothing about Ellie and her past, I would just view Ellie as an agility boss and would want to kill her as a player ASAP. This changes the dynamic of the narrative on its head, and you can understand why. It is some brilliant writing, all the more highlighted by the fact that if there were 10 emotions before with Abby, 20 more arise when you know what Ellie has been through. Games have always tried to add shock value in the name of emotional content, killing key characters just to induce that throat lump. But The Last of Us 2 never does this. It gives that emotional quotient to you as a part of the experience. You become the character and experience the emotional ride. For example, you kill a dog in the aquarium as Ellie since it attacks you. But when you switch to Abby, you realize that the dog is this good boy who loves to play fetch. This is a really strong moment. It is not to induce a guilt trip. Instead, it is a flip on emotions for the player. Owen and Mel were just random NPCs when you kill them as Ellie. But you know more about them when you play as Abby. And you are really left with a lump in your throat as a player. I was gutted when I realized the fates they'd meet. They are all good people, just as good as Ellie or Joel. Well, Joel did massacre a full floor of innocent fireflies whose only fault was that they had to go through with letting a young girl die to find a species-saving cure. That is absolutely no fault of theirs. Even Ellie knew the risks and was willing to let her life find meaning even if it meant death to find a cure to save humanity. The barrage of emotions I felt during the Abby-Ellie fight is something I have never experienced as a gamer. I did not want either of them to fight each other, knowing what the both of them had gone through. I nearly choked when I realized that Ellie would probably drown Abby as the soft music grazed the screen and tears rolled down my eyes. Thankfully, Joel and his epiphany saved the day. Forgiveness is what moves a relationship forward, but it is also what changes you as a person. Ellie could not get the images of a bloody Joel away from her mind, which was her cause for vengeance. But when she has the upper hand on Abby and is finally about to avenge Joel's death, the realization that it is all coming to an end hits her. The image of Joel with a six string. A quiet moment that shouldn't have meant much in her life, but turned out to be one of the most important moments. The Last of Us 2 is a masterpiece written only for the gamer to experience emotion like never before. It has left me with an insurmountable feeling of joy and a plethora of characters that will remain in my heart for as long as I live.
'Cause I believe, and I believe, 'cause I can see our future days of you and me. There you go.
Well, that didn't suck.
I'll take what I can get.